Today's episode is it's going way back to the early college years, I feel.
Yes. To me, one of my favorite things that we really bonded over, Nancy Drew, which I've always been a fan of Nancy Drew, the books and everything, but we started playing the computer games as 19 and 20-year-olds in college, because that's, a good hobby to have.
classic college activity was playing Nancy Drew computer games together, like giant nerds.
So with all of our dorm room lights off, and we're like hovered around
the glow of the circa 2004 laptop screen.
Yes, with our case file legal pad.
Yeah, you can't forget about the fact that we had a single notepad that we just continuously used for every single computer game. So all of our notes from all of the games, but also we took notes on the games, which I feel like that's just already a level.
Right. And neither of us thought that this was odd. It was very normal to us. I was thinking about how did we even get started playing those games, and so I was remembering that at the time I was dating our dorm room neighbor.
Yes, that's true.
And
we lived in a co-ed dorm.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was dating the guy.
Not common, but I don't know. Our dorm was co-ed.
Yeah. I thought it was weird when I got there, but I was like, okay. So anyway, I was dating the guy who lived next door to us, and he invited me to go home for the weekend with him to spend time with his family and stuff, because he only lived like an hour away. And while I was there, he had a younger sister who was about, I think, probably like 10 or 11 at the time. And I was hanging out with her, and they had a family computer, and there was a Nancy Drew computer game on the desk. And I was like, oh, what's this? Like, I love Nancy Drew. And she was like, oh, I got that for my birthday. I tried playing it a little bit, but it's like kind of hard. And I'm like, oh, well, do you want to like show it to me? I'll take a look at that, because I'm just thinking like, oh, Nancy Drew, that sounds fun. This is one of my favorite book series. And so I started playing it with her, and I could tell she lost interest after a little while, but I was enthralled by it. I was like, oh my God. And we didn't finish the game, right? Like, we got into the game, and I'm like, okay, we're going to go over here and we're going to go do this. It got to a point where I'm pretty sure she was just watching me play the game, and that's probably why she lost interest, because I wasn't very into it.
Well, now then I had to these days, they just watch people play video games on YouTube.
Well, that's true.
So
I know.
Maybe, maybe.
But yeah, I was like really into it. And I remember after we left for the weekend, it was bothering me that I didn't get to finish this game. And I wanted to know more about like how it ended, or like I didn't get through all the puzzles or whatever. I'm pretty sure I came back and I was like, so over the weekend, I was playing this game. And I think you might like it, because we had talked about playing other PC games, like as kids.
Oh, yeah. As kids. We had played some of the same computer games. I remember Myst was like the big one that we had both played.
Really
and I also
enjoyed.
feel like I want to reiterate again that we were randomly put together as roommates.
Right? Yeah.
I just feel like this, this is a random, but this was our second year of living together, right? It was sophomore year?
Yeah, it was definitely, sophomore year.
I remember you coming back and you were like, so I was playing this computer game over the weekend, and
it's for kids. I think I was distinctly like, I mean, it says like for 10 and up, but it was kind of cool.
We played on senior detective level, please.
Yeah,
we
that's
did not
true.
Play on junior detective level.
That's true. We always were up for the challenge of senior detective.
Senior detective level.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm Katie.
And I'm Emily.
We're two long-distance best friends with a passion for learning about all the things that make everyday life interesting.
With my PhD in geography
and my master's in library science,
doing deep dives on topics is our idea of a fun time together. We'll share our findings with you on
Researching the Obvious.
If these computer games, if you know, first of all, they're fantastic. We will talk about them more in this, like later in this episode. But If you haven't played them, they're basically like a
first-person adventure / mystery with like logic puzzles and other various puzzles throughout. So like you play as Nancy Drew. You never see Nancy.
Right. You walk through the environment. It's, immersive, right? It's not like just static puzzles on a screen or something. Like you're walking through the environment, you're clicking through. It's similar to other computer games like that I played as a kid, like King's Quest.
Myst.
Those like Freddy Fish. Yeah, Myst, Freddy Fish, those computer games, Putt. So it's like similar to those games where you're clicking through like different areas and you're exploring different places and you're talking to different characters. There's like lots of dialogue. You had to like ask people questions to get answers and you're trying to solve a mystery and so they're very engrossing.
Yes.
Games.
So we decided that yes, this would be a good idea for us to purchase one of these games and play it together, and thus began our weekend hobby of playing Nancy Drew games in our dorm room.
Yes.
Alone.
An obsession, really.
Yeah. And it would be
because
like,
let's be honest, we would like sit there and we'd be like, I want to play this game. We have homework to do.
Yes.
And then it would be like,
that's what I was
it would be like our incentive to get our work done. We'd be like, quick, finish your essay so we can go and figure out what's going on in Nancy Drew.
Yes. Yeah. I totally remember that being like, well, I have to write 3 more pages of this and you had to do this. I'm like, okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to finish both of these things up and then we can pick back up on Nancy Drew.
It became, like I said, I think more of an obsession than anything else.
Sometimes on the weekends we would order pizza and like eat our pizza while we played Nancy Drew for like hours, or we'd like make ourselves take a break and go to the dining hall and come back.
It's true.
Play more.
It's true. Or our college was not a dry campus, so sometimes you pick up some drinks. Settle on in.
Boone's Farm.
Settle on down for an epic night of rum and cokes and Nancy Drew.
That's right. They were very engrossing because there were several times where we got startled by things in the game, or like we would like find clues or like figure something out. We'd be like, "Oh my god!"
Like I can't believe that's what happened. Or we'd get stuck, and then we'd be stuck on a puzzle for like 3 days. And anytime,
that would make me so mad.
I distinctly remember there were a couple times where our friends would come into our dorm room and we'd be like, look at this puzzle. Help us solve it. We can't figure it out.
What is going on? What is going on with this?
Because we never wanted to look up hints.
Yeah. But I always enjoyed, too. I felt like we did, even though this is a one-player game, technically, we would take turns with the mouse. I felt like we complemented each other very nicely because each of us was good at a different type of puzzle a lot of times, or like sometimes like a puzzle that I would look at and I'd be like, I have no clue. I have no clue what's going on here. And you'd be like, oh, I think I got this. And
we had different
you'd be able to solve
for sure with the puzzles. And then randomly, these games, they teach you a lot of information because I always will remember that one random puzzle where it was like a set of dentures and you had to click specific teeth. So you had to learn about like which was a canine and which was like an eye tooth and whatever.
Yes.
And you had worked in an orthodontist office. And so you knew all of the teeth and you're like, oh, we don't need to find that book. I'll just click the right teeth. I was like, oh my God. How do you know teeth? So, I didn't have to learn the teeth. So there's like a ton of these games. Like, so they're still making them. We'll talk about this later, like I said. But at the time, even when we were in college, there was like, I don't know, 16 of them or something crazy.
Yeah, and there were a lot.
We'd like finish one and then we'd be like, okay, what one do we want to buy next? But also we were poor because we were in college.
Yeah.
And so at the time, the best way for us to acquire these games, because they're on CD, right, was to go on eBay and try to win the computer games for like very low bids.
Yes. I had forgotten about this, but that is exactly how we got them.
So we literally would sit on our computers and like try to win the games on eBay for like the least number of dollars. And we'd be like, oh my God, I won that game for $5. And then we'd wait for it to get delivered, like shipped to college. And then it would be like the most exciting day because we'd get it.
It was like Christmas morning. We have a new Nancy Drew game to start. When are we going to start it? How much homework do you have this weekend?
And so we definitely played these games halfway through sophomore year when we started, all the way through junior year, all the way through senior year. And then even after we graduated and we didn't live together anymore, I would like come visit you for a weekend and we would try to play a whole game in a weekend.
We did that a couple of times and it was awesome. I came to visit you in Ohio or something and like we didn't really leave the apartment the whole weekend. We just sat in front of the computer and we like finished Nancy Drew.
Yep.
A whole game.
And takeout.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I would bring
losers.
I would bring our case file. I saved the notepad. I saved the notepad from college and I was like, I brought the case file.
I also would like to point out that one year in college, I was Nancy Drew for Halloween.
Yes. Oh yeah. That was a great costume.
It was really good, actually. I found that weird like tweed skirt and it really worked.
That was always one of my favorite costumes. So this is just a small fraction of our obsession with Nancy Drew.
Oh, I read the books when I was a kid, for sure.
I loved mystery books, and I remember my grandma had a bunch of the old Nancy Drew books that were like my mom's when she was a kid, and so I would go over to my grandma's house and I would borrow those and read those, and I borrow them from the library, and there were so many, and it's like this nice, predictable mystery format that like is a great introduction into like a cozy mystery kind of thing. I was always a big fan of the books and the character herself. Yeah. She was a great female heroine and detective.
Mm-hmm. During like a time where I feel like just in children's literature in general, there's not always a ton of female characters.
Main like protagonists. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Especially not ones that like, I don't know, she was pretty... Like, I remember always being jealous of how, like, and independent she was, too. I mean, she was always, like, jet-setting all over the place and going here and exploring that. And, you know, like, her dad was, like, a side character that, like, barely knew what was going on.
She was very confident, right?
Yes.
Just confident in herself, and I always thought that was pretty great.
And she had her two besties who were, like, comic relief sometimes. Yeah.
They show up in the computer games.
Yes, they do. They're hilarious. And Ned a little bit too. But he was also a very secondary, I feel like, character. Yeah. It was just kind of like he was there.
Like important. It's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be the supportive boyfriend in the corner. Well, so I feel like because I had read all these books and then obviously we had played all these computer games and stuff in college, it started me on wanting to know a lot more about Nancy Drew and like where they came from and the author, Carolyn Keene, right? Like, what's that about? And how they wrote so many books. And so most of the information that I'm going to talk about in this podcast today actually comes from a book that I ended up reading called Girl Sleuth, Nancy Drew and the Women Who Created Her. And it's by Melanie Rehak. It's Rehak. I'll be honest with you, it's written in more of like a history monograph style. So for me, being a former history major, having read a lot of this style of book, it reminded me it's definitely more in the style of what I would have read for like a history class, even though it's about a contemporary like pop culture sort of figure. There's a lot of detail in this book about just...
Is there an extensive bibliography at the end?
It has a very extensive bibliography at the end. The notes and bibliography start on page 318 and end on page 354.
Okay. Wow. That is a well-researched book.
Yes. So I will admit that this book, I mean, I'll recommend it, but probably not for everyone in the way that, you know, it's not going to be a quick summer beach read necessarily. It's got a lot of detail, but it taught me a lot about Nancy Drew, how it was created, wrote the first few books, and the history of that things.
I did more research on the computer games, but I did read a little bit, and I did not realize that Carolyn Keene was a ghost author.
Yes. So yeah, I guess number one thing to know is that Carolyn Keene is not a person. It is a pseudonym for
many different authors.
Many different authors. This book, Girl Sleuth, they talk about the women who created her because it's primarily focused on the first two women who were Carolyn Keene. Who wrote a decent number of the early books.
Gotcha.
So I guess I'll get into that a little bit. So the beginning of this whole thing starts actually with a man named Edward Stratmeyer. And basically this guy, Edward Stratmeyer, he was writing books during the late 1800s. And so we're starting, in like the 1890s here. And so in the 1890s, during the Victorian era, there was a growing demand for children's literature. In general, if you look at the history of society, during the Victorian era is when we really see there start to be a differentiation between children as people and like adults as people. For a long time, children were just treated as miniature adults. That's why there was a lot of child labor and stuff that was going on prior
that stuff
to the Victorian era. And so Victorian era is like really when we start seeing like clothes made for children and like toys made for children and literature made for children. So we start seeing the growth of that. And so during the late 1800s, there was a new demand for children's literature. And so this guy, Edward Stratmeyer, he wrote a ton of children's literature. He was a really prolific children's literature author, like insane. He wrote a lot of dime novels. Okay, so these are like little cheap paperback book kind of things that you buy for, a couple pennies or a dime or whatever at the store. And so kids would buy these. So some of the other series that he created were, his most popular one was called The Rover Boys. He also created a series, Ruth Fielding. He created the Bobbsey Twins. He created
I know the Bobbsey Twins. Yeah.
Yeah, he created the Hardy Boys. He created the Motor Girls. He created the Nick Carter Library. So there was just like a ton of little like series that he created. And what he recognized was if he gave each one a different author name, then it would expand the market more because people would think it was like a new author coming out with new literature. Yeah. So he basically created all these different series, and then he created all of these pen names for who each series was by, but they were all written by him. And he, like I said, he wrote a crazy amount of books. So, for example, in 1 year, he wrote 42 of these little books, right? Chapter books for kids. Yeah. They're not like
I suppose in the Victorian era, if you're going to be a writer by profession, you probably have to churn out the volume in order to make any money whatsoever.
But so he's writing like a ton, okay?
Yeah.
And a lot of the books were initially aimed at boys. Again, like we were saying, boy characters, but he had 2 daughters. And so what ended up changing is that he was writing all these books for boys, all these dime novels, churning them out. And as his daughters were growing up, he realized, oh, wait a minute, they don't really have any literature to read. He would give them the books he was writing, like the Rover Boys series, and they enjoyed them, but they were about boys. And so he was like, okay, I think we have a real opening here to
an untapped market
books that are in the same kind of vein, these like dime novel type stories, adventure stories, kinds of things, but for girls. And so that was like the Ruth Fielding books were the first ones that he started for girls. The Bobbsey Twins had boys and girls in them. And he always had this idea that he was going to start a specific book series that starred a female protagonist. However, at the same time, he was getting really busy with writing all of these books because he was just churning it out and the demand kept growing. And so he didn't have enough time to meet the demand. And so what ended up happening is that he basically created what's called a book syndicate. The way that it worked is that he created outlines for books. So it would be like, okay, the next
like the
Rover
general
Boys,
story.
Yeah. So in the next Bobbsey Twin book, like, here's what's going to happen. And he'd create like an outline of the story. And then what he did is he would hire writers to just use his outline to actually write the book. And then he'd pay the authors like per manuscript that they sent him. And then he'd do the final editing and then send it off. And these authors had to sign these like crazy non-disclosure contracts so that the true identity of the pseudonym, the pen name, was never revealed, of like who was actually writing these books. And so he like is creating all these outlines, sending them off to these writers. They're writing up the manuscript. He's getting them back. He's editing it, and then he's sending it to the publisher. And so they just created this huge empire of all of these children's dime novels. And so what happens is he was really excited about writing detective novels. If you think about it, in the 1920s, this is when Agatha Christie is writing her
one of my other
novels.
favorites. Yes.
Yeah. And it's when, detective novels were just really popular in the 1920s. And so that's when he started the Hardy Boys. He got the Hardy Boys series going in 1927. And that one was pretty successful. And so he wanted like a girl version of the Hardy Boys because, again, of his daughters and that kind of thing. And so had an idea that he called the Stella Strong series. He named her Stella Strong.
That's terrible.
Yeah. But so that was the original idea of Nancy Drew, was like a girl detective story series that he called Stella Strong series. So I'm going to pause for a minute here and talk about the first Nancy Drew author, because she actually worked for this Stratemeyer guy before the Stella Strong / Nancy Drew books.
Oh, okay. So she was already
on his payroll writing some other books. Her name was Mildred Augustine, and she was like a legitimate badass in real life. Like, her life is crazy, and honestly, people have said that she was basically a real life Nancy Drew.
Nancy Drew.
It's not surprising that we get Nancy Drew as who she is because of this woman, Mildred. So Mildred was born in Iowa in 1905. She grew up in Iowa, and she was really smart. She started writing early. She really enjoyed writing. Even as a teenager in high school, she was like writing little stories that she'd send to the local newspapers and things like this. She read all these boys' books, right? She read all the Rover Boys books. She really loved these books. She actually graduated high school in 3 years because she was smart. And then she went to University of Iowa in 1922. She was a crazy athlete. She played basketball. She played soccer. She was one of the best swimmers at the time at the University of Iowa, like would win all sorts of swimming meets. She played xylophone. She wrote for the college newspaper and the yearbook.
What did she do with her free time?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh, and she also graduated college in 3 years, undergrad.
Oh my God.
Yeah, she was crazy. Okay. After she graduated, she started looking for work, and she knew she wanted to be a writer. That was like the only thing she loved was English and being a writer. And so she was doing some like little newspaper writing. She answered an advertisement to start writing for Stratemeyer. And so she wrote a couple of the Ruth Fielding books, who was considered to be a modern woman with a career and a supportive fiance. Yeah. And it was the 1920s, and women were getting jobs and, doing all the things. And so that's like what those books were about. So she was kind of doing that on the side, was writing these Ruth Fielding books. She also decided to go to graduate school. And I think this is really cool because Iowa, they have such a strong writing program. There's like a plot line in that TV show Girls.
Girls, right? Yeah, I was going to say, isn't that where
Iowa? Yeah.
Yeah, she gets like a grant or something.
Yeah, and Iowa's like this really big writing school. And so they have a huge school of journalism. And she was the first female to graduate from the School of Journalism at Iowa.
Wow. Okay.
In 1927. So she graduated from the graduate school in 1927. Yeah, so I feel like she's just like an all-around awesome,
wow, yeah,
like ahead of her time female, doing cool
overachiever much.
Yeah, like writing for newspapers, like all this kind of stuff. So on the side, she was writing these little Ruth Fielding books. And so when Stratemeyer came up with the idea for Stella Strong series, this modern woman detective, like, I'm gonna go solve crimes, being my own whatever 16-year-old self, you know, he really loved Mildred's writing. And so when he conceived of this series, he was like, you're going to be the person that's going to write these books. And so he approached Mildred in the late 1920s. It was 1929. And he said, this is my idea. Here's like the first 6 books that I have outlines for this idea. Will you write these and kind of make Nancy come to life?
Come to life. Well, yep. Or Stella at that time first.
Well, yeah. Okay. And so she was like, yep. And they fielded it with the publisher and decided that Stella Strong didn't sound great. And so that's how they ended up. They actually first came up with Nan Drew, and then they lengthened it to Nancy Drew.
Yeah, also a good choice.
Good choice. Yeah. And so she took on the Nancy Drew series in 1930. She wrote this, you know, bold, modern woman, not concerned about marriage, which was supposed to be the new wave of women, you know, getting their own careers. She was kind of popular. She was spunky. She was like, you know, doing her thing. And what's crazy is that in 1930 is when the books get released. Stratemeyer unfortunately got pneumonia and passed away 12 days after the first Nancy Drew got launched.
Wow.
Yeah. So he
that sucks.
I know. So he never even got to see the success of Nancy Drew. Wow. I mean, he was very successful in his own right.
Sure, yeah.
But arguably, Nancy Drew became the biggest of his successes. And
yes.
It was pretty much instant success. There's not really exact figures because it's too old to know how many copies were sold. But we do know that in 1933, so that would have been 3 years after they first launched, and also in the midst of the Great Depression. I think that's important to keep in mind, right? When people didn't have a ton of money. Macy's ordered 6,000 copies of the latest Nancy Drew for their like Christmas sale, and all 6,000 of them sold out in a matter of days.
Wow.
In 1933. Yeah. So like they were really popular books, and pretty much instantly popular. So Mildred, who was awesome, she really is credited with creating the Nancy Drew that we know. I mean, Stratemeyer, he came up with the idea, but she's the one that wrote. She's the one that wrote.
Filled in all the details. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Character development.
Yes. Yeah.
All of those fun things.
So she wrote 23 of the first 30 books in the Nancy Drew series. But again, she wasn't allowed to tell anyone. You know, she had to keep it like a complete secret. It was Carolyn Keene. That was the way they did it. But yeah, 23 of the first 30 were written by her. You can go on Wikipedia and see the list of all the ones that were written by her if you're curious. There were a lot of reasons why she stopped writing, but essentially, like as the Depression kind of wore on and then World War II hit, she had to take on more work to kind of make ends meet. And then when World War II hit, there was actually a lot more opportunity for her as a female writer. And so she started writing full-time for the Toledo Times during World War II. And she ended up working at the Toledo Times all the way until her death in 2002. Yeah. She was in her 80s when she died, and she was working at the Toledo Times, still writing a column up until the day that she died.
Yeah. That's so cool. That's also very badass.
Yeah. Some other amazing things about this woman. So her first husband unfortunately died during World War II, and then she got remarried, but she still did a lot of interesting things like the whole rest of her life. She became an amateur archaeologist and took several trips to Central America to do archaeological digs in the 1950s. So she spent like a good portion of the 1950s like traveling down to Central America doing these archaeological things.
Nancy Drew meets Amelia Peabody then. Yes. Right? Is that her name? The Elizabeth Peters character? Amelia?
Yeah.
Wow.
She became a pilot in 1964. She got her pilot's license when she was 59 years old.
Okay.
And she became a pilot, and she wrote all of these little columns for the Toledo Times that were like about flying. I have a picture of her.
Oh, cool.
In this book.
Wow.
Being a pilot when she's 82 years old.
Wow. So she just must have been like really bored a lot of the time. Like she just needed like new hobbies all the time. I mean, I'm impressed. That's just like
I think she was just one of those cool people that was just interested in a lot of stuff.
In everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Like Nancy, right? Like that's why people say that she was kind of like Nancy. But anyway, basically, because of this full-time job at Toledo Times and her husband's death and some other stuff, she was no longer able to write the Nancy Drew books starting in the 1950s. That's why she only wrote 23 of the first 30. I say 23 of the first 30 because she didn't write the first 23. There were a couple mixed in that were ghostwritten by other people.
Oh, I see. Like she didn't write.
So it wasn't like she wrote numbers.
She didn't write 1 through
23. It was just 23 of the first 30 that came
out.
Yeah.
Yes.
So then what ended up happening is after Stratemeyer passed away, 12 days after Nancy Drew launched, which is just sad, his two daughters ended up taking over the book syndicate, which was kind of interesting at the time as well, because it was the 1930s and having women take over this book syndicate was a new thing. And so when Mildred stopped writing the Nancy Drew books, basically at that time in the 1950s, those were hands down the most popular ones that were going on in this book syndicate was the Nancy Drew books. And so they needed those to continue to be written. Mm-hmm. One of Strathmeyer's daughters, Harriet, she ended up taking over the writing of the Nancy Drew books.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so she wrote...
was an aspiring writer herself.
Yes, yeah. And she wrote 29 of the Nancy Drew books. She wrote like a couple in the first 30, but books 33 to 59 were all written by her.
That's an impressive number.
Harriet, though, had different ideals than Mildred. She was brought up in this upper middle class lifestyle that her father had been able to build for them with the successful book syndicate. She went to college at Wellesley, which is more of a, I don't know the best way to describe it is.
Schmancy college.
Yeah, I mean, it's more of a schmancy college.
It costs like, more dollars.
Yeah. And it's
more exclusive.
Correct. And it had different ideals for women than maybe Iowa.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right. And so Harriet, you'll notice a difference in the first 30 Nancy Drews from when Harriet starts writing them. Nancy becomes a little more involved with Ned. There's like a little more focus on doing
their relationship
activities. Nancy becomes a little more interested in like fashion and some of these things. So there is difference in how Harriet is portraying Nancy than how Mildred portrayed Nancy. In 1954, there was a huge demand on the number of books that needed to be put out. And so the publisher, they kept putting increasing pressure on the syndicate. And so what happens is that Harriet, who was in charge of the syndicate at the time, she completely changes the way that the syndicate structure works. And since Mildred was leaving, she gets rid of the ghostwriter program entirely and changes the structure of the syndicate so that they only hired in-house staff writers as opposed to farming it out to other people. And that allowed them to churn out a lot more books.
But still under the pseudonym of Carolyn Keene.
Still under the pseudonym. Well, and still under, and the pseudonyms for like the Hardy Boys and the other series that were going on. The publisher also kept making increasing demands for other things, including switching up the societal norms and things that were being portrayed in the books. Since now it was getting into like the mid 1950s, as opposed to when they started being written in the 1930s, there was a really big societal shift, especially in what was expected of women in the 1920s, 1930s. It was about being modern women going out and getting jobs. And when we hit the 1950s, there was this change for women to be homemakers.
Back in the home and
back in the home, because you had all the soldiers returning from World War II, etc., etc. So in 1958, the publisher held a huge revisionist program and revised every single Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys book to make them more contemporary. And so
they took the old books and revised them?
Yeah, in 1958, they took every book that had been published on Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys and revised all of them to make them more contemporary. So one of the things they did was they removed all the racist references, which arguably we could say is probably a good thing. However, there's been a lot of backlash on that because basically in removing the racist references, they essentially just took out all of the diverse characters. So they just removed all diversity from the books. They changed Nancy. They shortened them to make them shorter. They removed whole side plots. They toned her down. They made her more of a law-abiding citizen, like goody-goody, as opposed to a little more spunky and rabble-rousy. They changed her fashion so that she was wearing like dresses more often instead of pants.
Well, and I'm also realizing now that I'm kind of sad because probably all of the Nancy Drew books that I read, even though they were the quote-unquote like old ones, were probably the ones from the 50s.
Revisionist. I know.
Yeah.
And now I want to find editions of the 1958 version.
Yes, I would like to too.
I mean, understandably, there's going to be racist crap in them.
Well, but I'd like to know like how the characters originally were written and like
right. And apparently, whole side plots were removed.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's weird, right?
Yeah.
That being said, in 1959, which was the year after they started doing this revision program, there was 1.5 million Nancy Drew copies that sold in 1959.
Oh,
so,
wow.
These books have continued to sell crazy amounts. At that time in 1959, there were 36 books. So you'll notice that Harriet then is writing pretty much all of her books under this new like revisionist standard.
Yeah. Well, now it makes sense that those are probably the books that were in my grandma's attic because they were probably purchased in the 50s, in the late 50s, early 60s, because that's when my mom was growing up. Wow. I feel like my whole understanding of Nancy Drew has now been a lie.
Right? It's crazy.
Yeah. I didn't realize. I mean, I thought since I was reading like The Secret of the Old Clock that was the original way it was written.
Yeah, no. Like, so some of the emphasis on things, my sister and I always joked about, like how Nancy's always going to luncheons and whatever. Like some of those social engagements and stuff wouldn't have really been in the first edition of them.
Okay.
That would have been more of like a revisionist version of Nancy being more
proper.
I don't know, of the times. Like in the 1950s when that's like what women did.
Yeah. Luncheons.
Yeah, luncheons.
Bruncheons.
But yeah, so anyway, like those books, you know, they kept writing them. In 1984, Harriet passed away, and so the syndicate was bought by a new publisher, Simon and Schuster. They bought it for $4.7 million, and basically at that point, it was only Nancy Drew. I mean, the Hardy Boys a little bit, but all of the other series prior to that were done. And so after the books that Harriet wrote, the authors just kind of varied. It was all staff writers. There really wasn't one specific person. And a lot of them are actually unknown. There's 175 Nancy Drews. And basically numbers 100 to 175, the authors are currently unknown. And I think it's because they were written more recently, so they probably aren't allowed to release.
They're still them. Yeah, they're still under
the last Nancy Drew book, number 175, was written in 2003. And so the books that were written during the 90s and early 2000s, those ones are author unknown currently.
Okay. I do remember the 1980s Nancy Drew. I would see those in the library, the paperback rack, and I'd be like, ooh, Nancy Drew, but she's wearing 80s clothes, and like she has 80s hair. Yes. And I mean, I remember enjoying them, but they were definitely different. I think they were still good, like basic mysteries and stuff, but they were just, I don't know, to me, a little bit of like the allure of Nancy was lost because in my mind, Nancy Drew's in the 30s and the 40s. Like, so they bring Nancy Drew out of the 30s and 40s and put her in the 80s. And it's like, I get what they were trying to do, but it also kind of, I don't know.
Yeah.
It was kind of a strange shift.
But overall, these books, they've endured and really solidified Nancy into our collective pop culture psyche because over 80 million copies of her books have been sold. They've been translated into 45 languages. They've estimated that the sales of the original hardcovers surpassed the sales of Agatha Christie, which is actually crazy because Agatha Christie was,
she's incredibly popular.
Yeah. Even as recent as 2002, sales of The Secret of the Old Clock, which is the first Nancy Drew, were still in the top 50 selling children's books.
Wow, that's
so even in the early 2000s, people were buying that book in droves.
Yes. Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, everybody knows who Nancy Drew is, I think. Like, I don't know how you could not know who Nancy Drew is.
Yeah, she's just part of popular culture now, you know? Like, Chewbacca. I mean, right? I also thought it was interesting that there's been 6 Nancy Drew films. I only knew of the one with Emma Roberts back from
that's the only one I knew about. Which, by the way, I don't think I ever saw because it also felt not like the original Nancy Drew to me. So I was just like, no, thanks.
And apparently there were 3 Nancy Drew TV series too.
Yeah, I remember when those came out as well, and I also was like, no, this doesn't look like Nancy Drew.
Well, there was one from like the 70s, I guess.
Oh, okay. I didn't know about that one. I thought I remember there being a more recent one, but
yeah, there was that.
I mean, if they had, what I am waiting for is the original Nancy Drew. Like, I want it set in like the 30s or the 40s or whatever.
It's true. They like modernize it for all of these movies and stuff.
Yeah, but I want the old Nancy Drew, and then I will go see that movie.
Nancy Drew.
Yes, exactly. And it can be like a little bit dark and a little bit gritty, but then also light and like fun. Like,
I love it.
I can see it. Why haven't they done that yet? I get what they're trying to do, like I said, but it's never appealed to me as much as like the original essence of that.
Girl detective. I would argue, and I know you have some facts about the computer games. I would actually argue that the Nancy that's portrayed in the computer games is probably more similar to the original Nancy from the late 1930s.
I know, as you're talking about this, I'm thinking like the computer games are set in modern time, but I agree. I feel like the character Nancy in the computer games, and also that like you're portraying, it reminds me of the older books. I do enjoy the computer games despite them being more modern. I think it helps that they didn't try to put a face with Nancy, like you're playing Nancy. Yeah. So there's definitely a character there, but it also puts you in like a different perspective. So that probably helps too. It makes you feel like you are Nancy.
Yes. Yeah. Well, also, I feel like Nancy's a little snarky. She's a little snarky in the computer games.
Yeah, like, she is.
She's got some comebacks that you can select for the dialogue options that are like, oh, wow, you really gonna say that? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I know. I remember we would like be choosing, what if that goes horribly wrong and we don't get the information that we need? And also, I remember we would always laugh about how like Ned was just, I don't know. He was like in our cell phone in the game, but he had no role whatsoever.
Oh, yeah. You could like call him for moral support if you wanted to talk to him.
Yes, that's literally all he would do. He'd be like, I'm sure you've got this, Nancy. Yeah. Don't worry. Be safe. Be safe.
We were like just the supportive golden retriever boyfriend.
Yes. And I remember if we would get stuck in certain parts of the game, we'd be like, let's call Ned. Make us feel better. We'd always not going to give us anything, useful, but, and then we'd have a good laugh about it. Make us feel
better to talk to our boyfriend.
Yeah, right? But then I'm pretty sure as soon as...
We're college kids with actual boyfriends, but it's fine. Right? We'll call our fake computer Ned boyfriend to make us feel better about this computer game.
But then I'm pretty sure, like, as soon as we would do that, then we'd also just make fun of him. We'd be like, ugh, Ned.
You don't know anything.
You're so useless. We love you, but you're useless.
Yep, pretty much.
So I decided to look into these computer games more since they played such an important role for our college experience.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I was actually curious to figure out where they started and what the story was there. Mm-hmm. And so these computer games are created by a company called Her Interactive. And it was founded in 1995. So these have been around for quite a while now, too, the computer games. Her Interactive started out as a subdivision of American Laser Games, which was a computer game design company. Mm-hmm. And much like the original Nancy Drew, they were trying to create a PC game that was targeted at girls, because in the 90s, a lot of like computer games were picking up steam, right? Like people had home computers and CD-ROM games were coming out, but a lot of them were more targeted towards like a male audience. Or even if you think about like Nintendo games and stuff like that too, mostly male protagonists. So there's like an untapped market of girl gamers, which they weren't really sure if that was true or not, but we think we can get them interested in this. And at the time, there were some other video games that were kind of targeted towards girls, but they were more like fashion or makeup based. And actually, Her Interactive's first game that was supposed to be for the female market was all about finding a date for prom. It wasn't a very big hit. Yeah. Okay, so
it feels like a very 90s plot line, though.
Yes,
like...
right, yeah. Kind of like Mall Madness-esque, right?
Yeah.
You know, shopping
you got a credit card.
Shopping and dresses. So anyway, that was their first attempt. It didn't go so well. And then they decided to pivot and they wanted to create something that was more challenging, more like cerebral, kind of had more puzzles and things like that. Mm-hmm. And so they decided to create the Nancy Drew game, Secrets Can Kill. And it was released in 1998. So that was the first one for the series. Mm-hmm. And it was very popular, so popular that at one point they began releasing 2 Nancy Drew computer games a year, which is actually pretty impressive because
crazy. No wonder there were so many when we went into college.
Yeah.
Because we were there in like 2005. And so how are there so many of these and we never heard of them?
Right? 2 games per year is a lot because we're talking about a whole story, a whole design of the game, all of the puzzles, all of the animation. And eventually they were so successful with that they absorbed the parent company, American Laser Games. And then it was just Her Interactive. And I didn't realize this because I don't remember this from the computer games, but apparently they were selling these with the tagline "for girls who aren't afraid of a mouse," which I think is very clever. But I mean, it gives you an idea of their marketing tactic, right?
Yeah, very Nancy Drew. Right? It's very Nancy
Drew. It is very Nancy Drew. That's what I like. I was like, yeah, that's clever. That's good. I would see that in a store and I'd be like, yeah, I'm not afraid of mice. I'm a intrepid detective type. There are now a total of 34 Nancy Drew games. Unfortunately, they lost some steam in the mid-2010s, which is around the time where PC gaming was kind of being converted into mobile gaming, right? So like
there was one Nancy Drew game that came out, you could do it on like an iPad, I remember.
Yes. Yep. Mm-hmm. So they did try to pivot again and tried to capture the mobile tablet market, but it wasn't very successful. And then they also created a version of the Secret of Shadow Ranch, but it was like a hidden object game for mobile. And that really fell flat because it was nothing like the computer games. And so people weren't really interested in it because I think what makes the computer game so great is it's like so interactive and, you know, the puzzles and the storyline and all of that. So they like put that hidden object one out there. That didn't do so well. And it seems like their financial situation was not great. They were like operating at a loss. And they had always been funded by like venture capitalist investors, and they needed a lot more money to get into the mobile market. And even though they did get some additional investors, that didn't really happen. And in 2014, their CEO just abruptly quit, and it took a week for everyone to find out that he was gone. And for reference too, this is like a smaller game company. We're talking about 35 employees. And from what I was reading, Nancy Drew was their product. And they were also designing and producing these games on their own proprietary software. So they weren't using a more standardized or a widely used platform to create and design the games. So they were kind of self-sufficient and insular in the way that they were putting out these games. And so he quit, and then they hired a new one. And a year after she started, they laid off like 14 people, which was like almost half of their staff. Wow. Yeah. So clearly they were taking some hits, like financially and in terms of what could they do next. And so around that time, you see that the games drop off. And they kept on promising that they were going to release Midnight in Salem. Originally, I think it was supposed to come out in like 2015 or 2016, and it ended up not being released until 2019.
Oh, wow.
So
I feel like I remember seeing, we were playing a game still, and I feel like I remember seeing like a trailer because we're dorks. Like, we've also traveled together to Salem, and we were like, I want to play as Nancy Drew in Salem.
In Salem, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there were multiple issues, it seemed like, and so they've had kind of a bumpy road since 2015, which is why there's a big gap in the release of the games that there wasn't necessarily before. But very exciting because this year they actually released another game. So game number 34 called The Mystery of the Seven Keys. So that was released May of 2024, which I thought was very exciting because it means they're not dead yet. They're still making
want
games.
Nancy.
That's right. I didn't realize until I kind of was reading these articles because I mean, obviously we're obsessed with these games, right? But as I was reading these articles about the story of Her Interactive and the way the computer games evolved, like they have a pretty diehard fan base that has stuck around and been very patient and still wants more. A lot of the articles that I read were written by people who were like, I started playing the Nancy Drew computer games in our family's basement on the computer. So it's like they have these fond memories of playing them as a kid with their parents, which is also funny to read because, you know, we were like 20 when we became obsessed with them.
Like drinking rum and Coke while playing.
Yes. Right. Yeah.
That's also interesting though, because when I was reading this Girl Sleuth book, a lot of the interviews she did were people saying a similar thing about reading Nancy Drew, like how they have fond memories of growing up, and Nancy was like really a role model for them. And so it's interesting the computer games maybe being that more modern role model in a way for some girls growing up.
There's definitely some commentary too about the excitement over a computer game styled like that requires some intelligence and some savviness to solve the puzzles, and for it to be targeted towards a girl and to have a woman protagonist was kind of important. And again, this was in the mid-90s, because computer games and gaming in general was still relatively new. I mean, it wasn't brand new, but there was kind of a sense that girls might not really be interested in gaming, like that was more of a boy activity. And so this was definitely a departure from that, and then obviously it was very successful. So I think it kind of showed too that, like, oh yeah, there definitely is a market for women who are interested in this technology or this mode of learning and exploring and things like that. Interestingly too, when the production of the computer games dropped off a little bit because they were having their troubles, they did release a mobile game for a much younger demographic that was intended to help girls learn how to code. So like the basics of coding. Nancy Drew Codes and Clues. Yeah. So yeah, it was like Nancy Drew is the character, but it's a very different format, obviously, than the mystery games or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, Nancy had to learn all of her skills somehow.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, how does she know how to defuse a bomb? She had to learn basic electricity skills somewhere.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
How does she know how to hack into a computer? She clearly had to learn how to code when she was 4.
Right. Yep, she did. She had a lot of skills. She had to learn them somewhere.
She was really MacGyver of a person.
Yeah, there are a lot of MacGyver moments in the games too, where you're just like, really? That's what we're gonna do? There's some scary moments in those games too.
I feel like I remember a puzzle once that was like a Rube Goldberg-esque machine situation where we had to balance a broom on like a cement block in order to like wedge open a window or something.
Yeah. And was there not like one where we were like stuck in a room and we're going to suffocate if we couldn't solve the puzzle in time? That was terrifying.
Yeah, I think we died so many times. Yeah,
we did. Yeah.
It was always like, you have made stressful. A fatal error.
That's right. You have made a fatal error. And then our other one that we still quote to this day is, something's missing here, as we'd be like clicking around frantically to try to figure out like what we're going to do next. Or we're stuck in, something's missing here.
No shit, Nancy.
Here.
No shit, something's missing.
We know. It was a very interactive game. The Codes and Clues app, I guess, from what I can tell, kind of mixed reviews. I think fans were kind of salty because they hadn't released Midnight in Salem yet, and then they put this time into this other app that's meant to be for much younger kids, and in their attempt to get into the mobile market. But
well, maybe they're getting back to their roots.
I hope that them releasing this game this year means that maybe they're back on track. And I think there's still a place for like PC games. I think they're realizing too, right? Like people aren't buying physical copies as much. Now they are still offering physical copies of the game.
I don't even have a CD player, so I don't even know.
I don't know. Yeah, you'd have to have a converter, I guess, or something. There's a limited number of physical copies that they produce if people wanted to purchase them. But then other than that, they're putting them on Steam where you can like download and play it that way. Honestly, I kind of hope that they maybe gave up on the mobile idea, because I'm not sure that I feel like the integrity of the game and detail and the complexity of it would be a little bit lost in mobile. It just doesn't feel the same.
I agree. I don't think I'd be able to do some of those puzzles just by tapping. Like some of them are really complicated.
Yep.
But I mean, also, mobile technology in the future might be amazing, right. But
I'm just thinking, like, one of the things I enjoyed the most about playing the computer games with you was when it's on the screen and you're playing like this first person game, there's a small part of you that feels like you're in the game. And I can't imagine feeling like that looking at a mobile screen.
I think that's what makes them like so fascinating of games. It's just Nancy is this, I don't know, she's the girl that you want to be, right? She's like the cool girl who's confident and knows herself, and
she's so smart.
Yeah, she has friends and a boyfriend, and you know,
she travels a lot. Everything. She goes to foreign places, and
so when you're playing the game, you're like, yeah, that's right. I'm the cool girl. I'm like the one that knows the stuff. I just think there is a huge community of people that, like you said, not only love these games, but continue to love Nancy Drew. I mean, there's tons of Reddit threads about Nancy Drew computer games with like every inside joke ever. I'll do a shout out to, there's another podcast that's called the True Drew podcast. I'll do a shout out to that podcast because it's just talking about not only the books, but also the computer games. She was helping to promote one of the new computer game when it came out. Yeah, I think what's interesting to me about Nancy Drew is just sort of that enduring legacy Nancy Drew has as like a female role model in a lot of ways. You know, your mom has stories about Nancy Drew, and then you have stories about Nancy Drew, and your kids, you could pass that on to your kids.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. I'll link this in the show notes, but I stumbled across a blog called Sassy Detective. And they're a game review blog, but one of the posts that I was looking at is basically a collection of data about all of the computer games. So they like went through and divided out what kind of plots there are in all of the games. And they have like a little graph to show you the plots and like where the games are all set. So there's a map. I've got a map for you of where all of the games are set. And then the educational topic that's featured in the game, what kind of crime is featured in the game, and then what kind of puzzles. So I was especially interested in the puzzle one because, oh my gosh, we had so many of those puzzles, right? That we've been through. Yeah. There's like codes and logic, environmental, traditional, and then variety. So they have like a little graph of how many puzzles fall into those different categories. So I don't know. I thought it was really interesting. And obviously someone cares enough about these games to break them down in this way. So again, I think that speaks to their popularity. Yeah. Also, Her Interactive has an extensive merchandise website, which I was shocked to find as well. So I'm crossing my fingers that they are trending upward again. Yeah. We'll see.
Well, it seems like the books are just always steady. So that's maybe good. Although now I want to read the whole one, to be honest.
No matter what happens, we'll always have the memory of our college days playing Nancy Drew together in the dark in front of a old laptop with rum and Coke and pizza.
Thank you for listening to Researching the Obvious. To learn more fun facts about everything that we're researching, follow us on Instagram at Researching the Obvious Pod, all one word. You can also follow us on Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you know someone that you think would enjoy listening to all of our findings, please feel free to share or give us a review. Researching the Obvious is written, produced, edited, and hosted by Emily Fekete and Katie Nakanishi. Tune in next time to hear more obvious facts.